sorry. Everybody, Val came in from our vacation to take our meeting minutes. Thank you. Call to order the City of Rhinelander Common Council meeting. It's Monday, December 28th, 2020 at 6 p.m. We are in the council chambers. Please call roll, Val.
Barnett,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Mikulowski,
Here.
Kelly, Anderson,
Here.
Holt,
Here.
Daniel,
Here.
Rossing,
Here.
Mayor Frederickson.
Here. We have quorum present. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments. Did anybody receive public comment from any constituents? Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment? All right, moving forward. Mayor's comments. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all. I hope this holiday season's been great. Obviously, for our snow plows, it's been wonderful. And being a mayor for 2 years where we had record snowfall and now finally having a decent year, it's good. I appreciate it. Number 6, meeting minutes. Approval of the meeting minutes from November 9th and December 14th. We will take this as 2 separate motions as we go.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 9th, 2020.
Rossing, second.
We have a
I
motion.
have a question
Yep, Gerald?
about that. On page 10 of the packet,
We're first taking the motion on the November 9th meeting minutes. We'll cover the December 14th here in a second. It is still? All right, excellent. Page 10 in the packet.
page 10 of the packet is still part of November 9th.
Correct.
Okay. In the middle of that page, it looks like we passed a motion and then tabled it. And I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it makes sense the way it's stated.
I believe, if I may, I believe that, I understand, I understand that it looks confusing. What I do recall from that, because if you were to follow that first statement, that would be accepting CIVMIC, which is not what we did. Tom Kelly did withdraw that motion because we all wanted to think on that a little bit longer. And we came back and made that decision at the next meeting. So that first statement there, motion by Kelly, second by Mikulowski to accept CIVMIC as the city's insurer, carried 8A, et cetera, that needs to be struck, because that's not accurate.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion to strike that before we accept?
I will make a friendly motion to accept the meeting minutes from November 9th as made by Alder Daniel and seconded by Alder Rossing, to strike that statement, motion by Kelly, second by Mikulowski, to accept CIVMIC as the city's insurance carrier, to 8A, 0 nay, motion carried. Just simply delete that.
Do we have a second on the friendly amendment?
Mikulowski, second.
Yep, Steve?
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to leave in that, a motion was made by, Kelly, seconded, and then you should go, however, before a vote was taken, Kelly withdrew the motion. Because otherwise it looks like Kelly's withdrawing a motion that doesn't exist. So I think you have to refer to the fact that a motion was made, it was seconded, but later it was withdrawn, and the second was withdrawn. And then there was a motion to table that followed that, and I don't know who made the motion to table. But you gotta try to capture exactly what happened. And Tom did make a motion, so it just that motion was withdrawn, and then a motion was made to table. And I don't know who did those, but that's what it should reflect.
If we just delete the part about the vote, that would probably work.
That's
No.
From two
exactly
to carry.
opposite of what he just said.
Yeah. No,
I suggest that we go ahead and approve the minutes if this is the only contention, accepting that, or directing city staff to go back and listen to that segment, which is online, to get clarity and state it as it happened in the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd prefer that we not vote on the motion until we've had a chance to review the tape and correct.
yeah. I would take a motion to table this to the next meeting.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Do you second that withdrawal? Do you have to?
I would second.
All right, excellent.
Okay, so
Chair-
now for the record, this is what it'll show, is a motion was made, but that motion was withdrawn. There's no reason to table now because the motion was withdrawn. So that we're clear, I'm helping Val basically write this up, and so the motion was made but was later withdrawn, and then it'll just automatically appear on the next agenda.
Okay,
I'll work with Val on the minutes, we'll get them right.
thank you. Moving forward, meeting minutes from December 14th, 2020, council meeting.
I have one thing, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I was on Zoom. I was present, but I was on Zoom
Okay.
on page 12.
It sort of says that.
We'll make a motion to approve December 14 minutes.
Holt, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Ordinance, first reading, ordinance 2020-15, amending 2.01.07, Police and Fire Commission.
Are we supposed to have copies of this?
It's in the packet, right? If we have copies of this, yeah.
All I see is copies of the previous ordinance.
Oh, the actual, yeah, that's what's in it, it's the previous ordinance. It's essentially reverting. Yeah, the previous ordinance is in the packet with the strike through. I just need to get the page number here.
Yeah,
Anybody have a page number for me?
I'm working on it.
26.
Thank you.
Thank you.
26, page 26.
Right, there were questions about what the previous ordinance was, so this was the inclusion in the packet, and it was changed in, 2017. And then the next page is actually the codified version within Muni Code, the city's code platform.
26 and 27.
But at this point, we don't have an ordinance to have a first reading of.
It's essentially the repeal of the past ordinance from 2017, or rescinding of that ordinance and reverting back to the previous version.
If I may.
David?
Reverting back to the previous version doesn't solve the problem of lack of clarity. My recollection of last meeting and discussion, advice from Steve Sorensen was that the language of either of those versions is unclear and should be rewritten with full intent and clarity. So reverting back to the previous writing, the ordinance would not solve the issue that we have. Am I correct there, Steve?
Yes, I would recommend that if you really want to, I mean, if you simply want to repeal the ordinance, you can repeal the ordinance, but that'll make it even worse. And my hope was that we would have received comments from the council from the last meeting till this meeting saying, I want it to be anybody that lives within 20 miles. I want it anybody who has a business in town. I mean, you need, the word citizen, citizen of what? Citizen of the United States, citizen of the city of Rhinelander, citizen of, you know, again, you need more definition. Otherwise, you're going to come right back to the same position. The way it is now, you have to be a resident of the city of Rhinelander. There's no other criteria. But if you're going to change this, I would suggest you put the criteria in there. And please don't use a word like citizen without some defining statement.
Is Lloyd's on vacation? Is he? Lloyd, can you discuss the 2005 version of League of Municipalities? And Val, during that time, was the 2019 version of Police and Fire Commission ordered for us? I asked you a couple weeks ago or a week ago.
I don't know that I have it,
Okay.
but I'll make sure.
There's a 2019 version of Police and Fire from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, which is where we get a lot of our base ground knowledge of how we govern. Lloyd looked at the 2005 version, reported to us. We believe the Police and Fire Commission has the 2019 version, and I asked Val to order that also for us for reference. But Lloyd?
All I can reference is because this topic keeps coming up, I went to the manual that, it's called the Handbook for Wisconsin Police and Fire Commissioners. It's a League of Municipalities manual. On page 2, it says, unless residency is required by ordinance, commissioners need not be residents of the municipality they serve. So I just shared that one page from the 2005 edition that I have. I do not have a current edition, so I just shared what I had back then.
Yeah, and we will be getting a version at some point.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
The current version has the exact same language in it. It makes no reference other than it says, unless your ordinance specifies, you do not have to be a resident. Just exactly what you read. The discussion, if you do the research, they talk about very little about picking who the commissioner should be. I mean, I could find very little guidance to provide to you tonight on what are the reasonings. So it's really up to you as a council to put a policy decision together. But what Lloyd has said, and you should all recognize, there's nothing in Wisconsin statute that requires a member of the Police and Fire Commission to be a resident of the city in which they are a member of the Police and Fire Commission.
I'm going to ask you for historical reference, why police and fire commissions exist.
Well, the reason police and fire commissions were created was really during the Progressive era, and it was really to eliminate graft and corruption because it was a nepotism job or a spoils job, if those of you that studied government. In other words, what was happening is if I was elected mayor, then I brought my own police chief with me, or if I was, and so it became very much a corrupt system for both fire and chief, and oftentimes the fire and chief weren't even law enforcement or qualified people. They just got a salary, and they were put on and in positions. And they cleaned this up during the Reformation type of we call it the La Follette era, if you want to go back to that, the Progressive era in Wisconsin. The concept was that you create a commission, and the commission had to be a neutral commission. That's why if you read the statute, it says there has to be 3 members, no more than 3 members of any political party can be on the commission, and you're supposed to attempt to have, the presumption was there was only 2 parties, so you're supposed to have 3 members of the Republican Party and 3 members of the Democratic Party. But it doesn't exactly say that in the rules, but that was the concept. And again, the whole purpose behind that was to make sure there was neutrality on the Police and Fire Commission.
David,
I'd like to say,
Excuse
hold
me.
on just a moment. David,
I would like, at the risk of sounding like we're kicking a can down the road, I'd like to make a motion to table this until the January 11th meeting with the expectation that members of the council, including myself, I would like to encourage them to submit statements recommending, with their recommendations. I certainly take responsibility for my part that I did not send anything in. I will also state that December 14th to the 28th is a particularly hard time to get me to focus on other things. But I think that would be the best course of action. I mean, discussing it further now, we've already had a couple discussions. We need to get things that are a little bit more in writing.
that's very clear. Eileen?
I'd also like to see the actual new ordinance drafted with the definition of what a citizen, however we decide to word it, include a definition of either citizen or resident, so that we're very, very clear on what it is. So that, I'd like to see that at the next meeting as well.
Yeah, if you give me your comments, I can put it into a ordinance, and then you can pick and choose the words in the ordinance.
Yeah. Can I get a
I will
second?
second David's, or motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to table this to the next ordinance, given that the council will do its due diligence with our attorney to make sure it drafts exactly, or at least as clearly as possible. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Ordinance second reading, ordinance 2020-14, 4.0307, fair housing. This is in your packet, page 28. 28. I usually have the numbers written down, but we had a 4-hour meeting this afternoon getting things done, so it's a good day. As a second reading, this also would be a chance for the public to voice their opinion on this. Is there anybody in the public that would like to voice their opinion on this? That's once. Is there anybody in the public that would like to voice their opinion on it? This is twice. And the third time, if there's anybody in the public that would like to voice their opinion on this, this is the second reading. All right, closed. Public hearing. Do we need to do any more on that? Is that it? On the second reading? Yeah.
This is Rossing. I'll make a motion to accept ordinance 2020-14, amending 4.03.07, fair housing.
Barnett, second.
There's a motion, a second. Any discussion? This again was the housekeeping for CBDG. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Public hearing on the taxi cab application from Running Inc. And this is page 29 and 30. 29 and 30 in your packet. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this? Second time, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? Third time, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this? Thank you. Yep, actions later in the thing. Introduction to new business. Approval of agreement with Town and Country Engineers to facilitate the Wisconsin DNR Stewardship Recreational Trails Program grant application. Page 31 in your packet. This has to do with the Timber Drive as far as having the recreational lane on the, is it south side of the road? Correct, and applying for the grant.
This is a 50/50 grant program, and it's likely to come back, well, I think it'll have to come back for council resolution and passage prior to the application submittal. Having been a part of stewardship grant applications in the past, they're incredibly detailed and complex to pull together, and Town and Country has experience in this regard. I believe the city had applied and was awarded a partial grant around the Chamber Trail. I believe that was funded in part by stewardship. So there's been history in funding stewardship projects here. I think the cost of the trail on Timber Drive is about 400,000, 300 and some thousand. So having a 50/50 grant to support the trail would certainly be welcome, and likely would be, the balance would be funded from the pedestrian portion of the Pratt as part of the Timber Drive project.
Rossing, motion to approve an agreement with Town and Country Engineers to facilitate the Stewardship Recreational Trails Program grant application.
Henderson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Eileen?
Yeah, actually, I'm wondering why it just includes the south side of Timber and not the north side where there's actually schools and headwaters and other opportunities, and it's definitely wide enough to be included in that project as well. So I'm just wondering why that was excluded.
I don't think that determination has been fully made. Part of it depends on the engineers, the right-of-way that exists on both sides of the road. If I'm not mistaken, there's sidewalks on a portion of the north side. I don't think it's the extent of it. It probably goes to where the rural cross-section is, just to the east. So I do believe there, actually at Bike Ped, there's been some discussion about the location of that trail as well. But it really comes down to how much right-of-way they're gonna have to put in an 8-foot trail and then keep enough boulevard between the curb and the trail. So that's of consideration. There's also some discussion about potentially changing the profile of the road, narrowing it so that, because there isn't, in some areas, there's not a need for on-street parking. However, the buses queue, I think on the north side is what I've been told. So all those things would be considered. So this is just the grant application. The actual design is the contract for that design will come before the body in January. So that would be an appropriate time to talk about design considerations as part of the project.
Okay, and the design of that, is that going to be a Town and Country project, or is that something we can put out to bid?
Good question. So we did have some discussion with Town and Country about them. They were the applicant for the DNR or the DOT grant for that roadway. And it's intended, at least at this point, that they were going to put in a bid for us to take a look at having them do the design, and that would come in January. I don't think there's enough time to put this particular project out to bid for design and get it accomplished this year. So that would have to be something that the group could discuss if you wanted to push it into 2022. That's a possibility as well. But at this point, the design really needs to get underway if we're going to get it done the next construction season.
Yeah. This coming before you is a step that is or may have not really been a visual part for us to look at. Usually it was a step or two in, and then we'd be looking at things. That being the case, for transparency and to move forward with where engineers have a place in the city and what we're doing with it, we thought, well, as far as vetting it, first of all, with Mark, whether or not the stewardship was worth it, whether or not we would get that money that way, or how we would do the path if it was to go a different direction. That being the case, we knew stewardship was also a very competitive grant. Therefore, is it worth paying them X amount of money to try to achieve that grant? So that's kind of where it sits in that process. But yeah, not every part is vetted by any way, shape, or means at this point. We actually asked them to look at a roundabout on the timber portion, but that has nothing to do with this. So off topic. I know. Just to give them something to write about. Anyway, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Val, please call roll.
Was that Rossing that made the motion?
I did,
And
correct.
who was his second?
Anderson.
Thank you. Mikulowski,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Holt.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Appointment of Bruce E. Ponton, agent for Christ Oil Company, 724 Lincoln Street. This is in your packet too. It's for the liquor license. Thank you. Page 33.
Rossing, motion to approve the appointment of Bruce Ponton for the agent for Christ Oil.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Approval of a consent to assignment Eagle Waste and Recycling.
Maybe Zach could talk
I'd
about
like-
this.
Yeah.
Motion. I move that the City of Rhinelander consent to the assignment of the City of Rhinelander solid waste and recyclables collection, hauling, and disposal contract dated December 10th, 2018, from Eagle Waste and Recycling, Inc. to Republic Services Environmental Solutions 3, LLC, subject to the completion of acquisition of Eagle Waste by Republic.
There's a motion? Yeah, he was making a motion. Yep.
Contingent upon the sale.
I need a second.
Larson, second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Yeah, I just, so it looks like somebody's taken over that company, is that right, Zach?
Yeah, the Republic Services, which is a really large municipal waste company, is acquiring Eagle Waste.
Do you have any information on their operations? And I think they've done a really good job so far. I just am curious if the owners and stuff are going to still be around or still be influential in the company. What do you know about all that?
I'll go to Chris because he actually had the conversation with the representative on the sale.
I got a call. It was a sale that was basically something that was pursued by the other company for a while and was not really even entertained by Eagle Waste. Finally came back with an offer that they couldn't refuse, and they assured us that all the working parts that are taking care of us now are remained in place. It's basically just the name that switched over as far as that goes at this point for us.
I don't suppose we have many alternatives at this point, but I'm kind of sad to see this because I think Eagle Waste has been a real contributor to the community and to environmental protection in the area. And so often when a company like that's acquired, it's the intent ultimately is to destroy them. And I hope that's not going to happen here.
I agree. No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. And Val, this will need to be faxed out even as of tonight. I'll sign it. Yep. Okay. Approval of an agreement with Medical Transport Management Incorporated. Page. Thank you. 36.
And again, this is sort of a housekeeping item. When we were going through some of the background work for the transition in insurance services, we discovered that the city hadn't had an updated contract with these folks since, I think, 2017. So we're bringing this again before the body as a procedural item. There aren't any new obligations or any responsibilities that the city's incurring on this deal, but simply for us to continue to provide this service and frankly, actually accrue some revenue in the ambulance services space. So that gives you some background on it. I guess the chief or deputy chief could talk on specifics about the service, but that's the long and short.
Do you have anything you want to add, Terry?
I can explain what the service This service would be really just an interfacility type of a transport or transporting of Medicare, Medicaid patients. So we had one about 3 weeks ago where we drove up to Superior, picked the patient up, and took them to Eau Claire for a shot, and then took them back to Superior. So it's for that type of a transport. We just need to make sure that we have a contract so that we get paid, because a lot of these are a Medicaid-based payment service. So it's not anything really to do within the city. There's a few of them locally, but most of them are a distance. So we want to make sure that we have something to get us paid.
Thank you.
Why are we involved in something as far away as that example?
So we get paid. It's revenue. That's why we would do it. It's revenue. We can turn down the revenue if you'd like.
Eileen?
Sorry. Is this in addition to Northwoods Transit? Or Northwoods Transit. So this is a service, they do some transportation, they don't? Okay.
No, this would be for patients that cannot take a taxi, or they
Okay.
cannot take, Northwoods Transit takes ambulatory patients.
Okay.
So this would be somebody that would have to be either transported by a cot or transported with medical care needed during the transport. This isn't something that you could put a patient in a taxi and take them. So they need medical attention or medical supervision during the transport.
Okay. And this is something we are already doing now?
This is something we've been doing since 2010, yes.
Okay. So this
It doesn't happen frequently, just so everybody knows. I mean, Tom, a half a dozen a year right now? Yeah, a half a dozen a year right now. Since we found that we don't have a current contract, we've actually turned down like 5 of them in the last month. So, and it sometimes can be, the trip I just explained was a $3,000 trip. So.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All those, sorry.
Did we have a motion? Or-
We did.
Yes, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Approve Resolution 2020-28 Taxi Cab License for Running Inc. It's page 41 in your packet. We don't have a motion in the last one. Excuse me.
I thought that was the one that Gerald did. No? It must have been the one before.
Yeah, it was the one before.
Okay.
In that case, I will make a motion to approve an agreement with Medical Transportation Management, Inc.
Mikulowski, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Approval of Resolution 2020-28 Taxi Cab License for Running Inc., page 41 in your packet.
I will make the motion to approve Resolution 2020-28, the taxi cab license for Running Inc.
Barnett, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Discussion of closed session, remote participation. Gerald, this is yours that you brought up?
Yeah, I'd still like us to at least open the possibility of, during this time that I'm medically unable to come to the actual meetings, I'm happy to be able to participate the way I have, except for closed sessions present a problem. And the last discussion we had of this in the spring, it seemed like it wasn't as much of a technological question as a matter of trust as to who might be in the room with me if I were doing it on Zoom. And I guess I'd like to see us have a little more discussion about that, or how we could satisfy that concern.
Tom?
So I don't think it's a matter of trust with, per se, you, Gerald. It's more of if we pass this now, what's it going to be in the future when you're not in that seat and it's someone who can't be trusted, or they give a reason not to be trusted? How do we know there's not a recording device on the other end of the line? How do we know that someone's not hacking into your computer and listening into closed session? I think it's an extreme security breach that is a very good possibility if the right people wanted to. Unfortunately, with a medical condition and the day and age we're in, I understand your frustration with not being able to participate in a closed session, but we also have to think of the potential of closed session stuff getting out, and that is just too risky of a proposition for me. So I would vote no matter what, because I think the security risks are way too great to open up a closed session meeting to any kind of technological devices. So that's just my opinion.
David?
Thank you. We've had this discussion numerous times, and I think that it's important to make a couple distinctions here. One is the distinction of open session and closed session, right? So in an open session, there's no risk of a recording device such, for example, because it's an open meeting regardless. And I understand that distinction between the open and the closed session. The second distinction is, are we talking about an allowance for a medical condition, or are we talking about the idea of opening this up to people who want to be on city council but also don't want to be here for a certain portion of the year, which in the last 2.5 years I have experienced. And those of us who have been on the council for that time have experienced that policy, or that allowance, because we didn't have a specific policy, but that allowance being manipulated, being abused in multiple ways. And in terms of how it affects whether or not people can vote and when they can vote, or whether certain people got advice on whether they could vote and whether that was different from what other people got. And hearkening back to a statement from Steve Sorensen on another issue with regard to setting policy. We don't want to think about and name specific individuals. So Tom Barnett is absolutely correct. This is not about you, Gerald, no offense. It's about setting a policy for the future. I think that certainly with the pandemic and health considerations, we absolutely had to improvise. We now have multiple vaccines starting to be implemented in this country. At some point, that issue is going to no longer be what's driving this. But we need to think about whether or not we want to set a policy based on current circumstances that will be used in a different way in the future. And this is something that I probably have said multiple times. The experience that I've observed is that if it's not for a medical purpose, I am not in favor. I have heard the mayor say multiple times since being elected, if it's important enough to you, you show up. I think that that's a good policy. And that's separate from a medical issue. That's talking about people saying, well, if you let people, we have the technology for Zoom, that's also a slippery slope. Do we need 6 out of 8 people in the room for quorum? Why would we need 6 out of 8 people in the room for quorum? Who gets to and who gets to not do that? Those are the problems that I think that that's the Pandora's box that I think this opens up. And I would be in favor of not opening that box. So,
Tom?
thanks.
This doesn't happen very often, but I agree with Tom and David that it's just not, it's not safety-wise, because we don't know, and Gerald, this is nothing to do with you, but we don't know when your wife might bring in a cup of coffee for you and overhear part of our conversation, and that's where we run the risk. So I would vote this down also.
Andrew?
I don't care either way. I mean, I whatever's easiest, I really don't, but as far as recording, it's already, we've already been there, done that, so, you know, I mean, we've already been compromised, so I guess either way, it don't much matter to me.
All right. Ryan?
Yeah, I don't like the idea of it personally. The only thing that I guess I would consider is if there was some medical issues and you wanted to be here in City Hall and set up in a room that was isolated from anybody else, like not being in the chambers here. We could set you up in a special closed room with a computer. I would maybe entertain that idea, but I do think that it's our duty to be here. It's our duty to represent the public, and I am not a fan of the closed session remote participation. Thanks.
Okay, Eileen?
I will say, a member of the county board did reach out to me and let me know that the county does allow Zoom participation in closed sessions. But that's the county. So again, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm well, pretty much where Andrew is. I don't know that we should set absolute policy because of what David mentioned. But I think as long as we have quorum in a closed session, I don't see a reason for it, so.
I'm gonna interject a little bit here. First of all, we've looked high and low for secure ways to do this, and if we found one acceptable, it'd be something we consider, because all technology moving forward has a reasoning. That being the case, environments that are in your own home, we've not found a way to secure that at this point. I've left it on here without a vote because, once again, when you set policy, then that puts it out of discussion for 6 months after we vote on it. That being the case, I've left it there just for discussion so that if there was a compelling reason to be brought before council, we could consider it. At this point, I feel like that there's not a compelling enough reason that we have council's direction to move where we would search out more product or anything else in that reason to do so. If it presents itself to it, if somebody brings it, to us or whatever at this point, that'd be great. But security right now is not something we compromise.
Mr.
Good enough? Yes.
What I'd like to do is present to the council for consideration at their next meeting a proposed ordinance that would talk about participation electronically with rules and regulations that would create a criterion that could be utilized in a special circumstance, but would also establish some of the security protocols that we are now assuming, but we really should put into ordinance format. So with the indulgence of the council, I would ask that I be allowed to present that at the next council meeting.
Okay, moving on. Oh, Gerald? You're on mute. Or chewing again. Yeah.
Yeah, Gerald, we can't hear you. Terry, you can ask him to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I assure you, I'm not taking it personally, and I agree with the general concept of not having it be a personal thing, or because of one person's situation, that it should be general, whatever we're going to do. I've never seen anybody sweep the room before a closed session to see if there's a recording device somewhere. So maybe our security isn't as good as we think. That's just a side comment. But could I'd like to request that when there is a closed session, that provision be made that I can come back to the session through Zoom for an actual vote on the result of that session. And most of the time that's worked. Last time it didn't because Zach wasn't wasn't present to do it, I guess. So that's just a request that, I think I still should have a right to vote, even if I'm not in on some of the discussion.
Okay, moving on. Approval of $5,096.02 payment to Acuity Insurance for the damages done by a city vehicle.
Do you want me to brief?
Sure.
These two items, as you can see by the date on this first one, was advanced to us. Our insurance coverages, liability coverages, did not provide first dollar coverage, meaning we're responsible for up to the first $17,500 of liability claims. Unfortunately, we had a situation with a city police officer and in an accident and incurred some liability of $5,000 on the first claim, and then the $10,000 was the result of an accident with a snow plow truck last winter. And so, just as a note of a point of order, I guess, on the future policies, we've incurred a policy limit of first dollar coverage. So any dollar that's incurred a liability would be covered by our policy. It costs about $6,000 a year. So we would have that policy paid probably a little over twice the time just in these two claims for this last year.
Barnett, I'll make a motion to approve the $5,096.02 payment to Acuity Insurance for damage done by a city vehicle.
Larson, second.
It's Barnett with the motion and Larson with the second. Any further discussion? Val, please call roll.
Daniel,
Aye.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Mikulowski.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carries. Approved $10,892.29 payment to Optum Insurance for damage done by a city vehicle.
Barnett, I'll make a motion to approve $10,892.29 payment to Optimum Insurance for damages done by a city vehicle.
Holt, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Val, please call roll.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Mikulowski,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Discussion of the administrator search and consideration of allocation of resources to perform candidate search and screen. This was covered in the work session, which is available via Zoom.
I would like to make a motion to have the McMahon Engineer Architects not to exceed 11,526 to administer the city administrator executive selection proposal.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Are we clear about which parts of this we really need? It seems like the first few items we've done already.
Correct. The work session covered that, and basically that's why the motion was to not to exceed, and it was so that myself and our HR generalist that will be starting on the 4th can go through that packet and then negotiate with them further as to cut in cost. But this way we get to work forward on that. It was too much information to go through with that service to say, well, we have this, we don't have that, we have that. So to say that we are going to pay them the possibility of the top part, but we're going to negotiate down from what we have when we discuss it with them. Eileen?
Do we have a time frame on when they would complete their parts of that contract?
The time frame that they have is 3 to 4 months, and that's with every part of it done. The problem is we already have a bunch of it done, so we should be able to cut into that significantly. If I gave you a date, I'd be lying because,
Okay,
you know,
do we have a goal then to
Yes.
complete this before?
by early March.
By end
March.
of January, you're saying? No. What did you say?
End
March.
of February,
End of
Yeah,
February?
well,
beginning of March.
correct.
To clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. That's a goal. Correct.
We only have the current assistant until the end of February,
Yeah.
so we ought to get it done before that.
That's why I was asking since,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
I think the very first directive that I got in June of last year was do this as fast as possible, of which this is the first time I've been given a dollar amount to actually get it finished to the end. So yes, I will try my best to get it done by the end of February. But anybody want to throw in any other opinions?
Yeah, I do have an opinion. I want to move this forward, but I don't want to spend over $11,000 if they're not going to be able to complete what we want them to complete. So if we want to get this done sooner, it doesn't make any sense to spend the $11,000. So I'd like to ask them, is this possible to work on in January and early February?
Correct. Yes, when discussed originally, the hard part about it was asking them to price out something and give a timeline when the original part of that search, whatever, would be basically a data dump of the stuff we did, which would cost us money. And I did not have any dollar amounts to discuss with them to cost them money, just to
Right.
go looking for them.
I guess I don't want us to give them any money if they say that they can have this done in 3 or 4 months. I would like to have something that says, yeah, we're going to start working on what you need right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Andrew?
I have to ask, what if we have the next administrator sitting here already? How does that play out? Just curious.
Yeah. It's a fair question. Obviously, it's a loaded question because there's a whole process to go through. Part of what we look to do, even if we had our HR person on board, which was a good portion to navigate through the different parts of hiring somebody, of going through these things and then into negotiations, would be great. We don't until the 4th. So that being the case, we've come to a crux in the road that is rather strange, unique, and I will say very commendable to the flexibility we've had to this point. Once again, I'm not going to express a lot of frustration, but I've asked for some of that flexibility all along and got a motion tonight to be able to engage a group to professionally escort us to the end of this search, however it may be. So that's where we sit right now.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
I had a
Val, please.
couple of questions. One is it has references to city council / search committee. Are we in agreement that we're going to do it as a full council? Pretty much everything that involves the council?
the report back from the McMahon Group will be as presented in that packet that you received about a month and a half ago, I believe. December 8th.
Well, the other concern I had was at the bottom of page 11, pre-employment checks. Is that really the first point at which we can do any kind of background check or verification of what people are telling us when we've already narrowed it down to one person? That seems pretty late in the process.
They will do a background check well before that. They won't do a deep dive until you have a person, and then they'll do a deep dive. But they'll certainly do what we'd call a peripheral check. I mean, I talked to, some of you know, Attorney Macy, who does this all the time for our law firm. He gets hired by many different municipalities to do their employment law and go out and do the checks and stuff. And he said that he thought the format that we've talked about is very workable. In fact, he works with the McMahon on several occasions, and he thinks they can get it done. But he did describe the process as it'll depend a lot on the candidates, but the world of potential city administrator candidates is such that the investigative group knows pretty much everybody on the list because they've been looking at those same people in other communities over the same period of time. So it'll probably be given the circumstances of the state of Wisconsin right now and the searches that are going on, it'll probably be faster than you think. But it certainly will cover the detail you're worried about.
Val, please call roll.
Before I call the roll, does somebody have the documentation for me so I have the dollar amount and all of the information? Would you do that? Give me your
It should be
motion,
in
please.
the
I have nothing to go on right now
December
except
8th
what you
packet.
told me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, I will call the roll. Kelly.
Aye.
Barnett.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Anderson.
Yeah, he is.
I'll come back to him. I'll come back to him. Holt.
Aye.
Mikulowski.
Aye.
Daniel.
Aye.
Rossing.
Aye.
And do we have anything from Anderson yet? No.
We'll wait a little bit because he'll want to vote on this. Please speak into your mic, Tom. Please, for the benefit of the viewers at home. Yeah.
Couldn't have done a better job of proving it, Tom.
Yeah. Gerald?
Anderson? He's muted. You are muted right now.
Aye.
Thank you.
The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Discuss notice of requirement on specified 5.07 zoning, hearing on application. This came from Anderson also.
I presented this as a proposed ordinance, not expecting it necessarily to be voted on at this point, but I'd like to move that it be referred to the Plan Commission
Thank you.
for their recommendations on these topics.
Excellent. There's a motion to move this on to the planning.
Holt, second.
And Holt with a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. There's a list of future agenda items. Please take note of it and add any to Val, Zach, and myself. At this point, then, we are at the end of the agenda. We are adjourned.